much. I'm now joined by Ngaba Kwankwa, who is the Chief Whip of the UDM and also speaks to them on matters finance for the party. Mr. Kwankwa, thanks very much for joining us this afternoon. A speech where the Minister was tightening the belt on government spending. Are you satisfied?
Well, we can say to a large extent we are satisfied. He's hit all the right notes in terms of what needs to be done in order to try and rein in public debt and in particular the budget deficit. For an example, he spoke about the reduction of the expenditure ceiling by 10 billion rands and making sure that they cut expenditure on non-essential items. That was very key. But I would have liked to hear him emphasize more on how or what they intend doing in terms of dealing with wasteful expenditure in particular. We must also commend the fact that there's now funds allocated for fighting Ebola in Africa. It's an African problem. We're Africans, we should do something about it. But we're not convinced that enough is being done to get state-owned enterprises to give us value for money for funds that are allocated for state-owned businesses, rather for major projects that the state actually takes on an annual basis.
All right. Mr. Kwankwa, thank you very much. We really do appreciate your time. Let me just quickly glance over. I see my colleague Abra Babia is standing by. Abra, over to you.
Thanks again, Lucanio. With me right now, I have Dr. Mildred of the FF+. Dr. Mildred, now we are not making progress in areas such as raising income or reducing poverty. And the minister said that over the next 2 years, he's hoping to save the country 1.3 billion rand. Is this an attainable goal?
Well, I hope it's attainable because I think he must have saved a lot more. He's freezing posts and that type of thing. Surely we'll support him on that. But the 1.3 billion, I think, is not enough. If you really look at the deficit and you look at the growth rate, he admits the growth rate, he predicted 2.7, it's now 1.4. And if you make that calculation, then he said we need 15 billion more in revenue and he'll come with measures next year. That means tax increases or something like that, and we really can't afford this at the economy at the moment. We need growth. So in that sense, I'm worried, and I also wanted some more clarity on the parastatals. They like orphan children, sort of asking the father money all the time, and he's not helping them to become big. Eskom, Airways, Post Office in a sense, all of those. We can't continue like this, handing out money every time, help them out of trouble. They must be on their own now, and he was very vague on that one.
Dr. Mulder, thank you so much for your time. I see Lucanio has a guest ready. Lucanio, over to you.
Abra, thank you very much. I am now joined by the Chief Whip of the Economic Freedom Fighters, Mr. Floyd Shivambu. From the Freedom Fighters side, just firstly a general overview of the budget.
Now look, we think that the Minister is making lots of empty commitments which were made by previous Ministers of Finance. That is what Pravin Gordhan said in the last medium-term budget policy statement. And that is what Manuel used to do year after year, but there are no real changes because the South African government is failing to recognize that the challenges of the South African economy are structural challenges that speak to the ownership and control of the economy, the inability of the state to generate adequate revenue to expand on social services. There is no real increment in terms of what is available to improve the living conditions of the people. And there are lots of natural resources that can be utilized for that purpose. But what has been presented here is just a continuation of the neoliberal capitalist project, which is not helping us.
Let's talk about it. You now saying that they're not putting anything on the table. What is it? What are those concrete steps that the EFF would have liked to have heard from the minister today? Just very briefly.
Look, when we arrived there in Parliament, we said that the government should deal much more decisively with the question of base erosion, profit shifting and transfer pricing, because that is stealing billions of rands from South Africa, and there's still no action in terms of these occurrences of tax avoidance in South Africa. And our position is that we need a government that will know what its disposal, what does it have, particularly with regards to natural and mineral resources. But nothing is being done in that regard. They pretend as if everything else is fine when there's a crisis of resource theft and tax avoidance in South Africa.
All right, Mr. Shivambu, thank you very much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Devin, we now cross over to you in studio.
All right, thanks very much indeed, Lucanio.